Hawaii response, Mr. President?
Maureen Callahan, where is our president? In the ashes of Hawaii, 96 are dead and 1,300 are missing, yet inexplicably Biden says no comment and snoozes on his beach lounger 5,000 miles away. Has he no shame? Where's the president? It's been nearly a week since the apocalyptic Maui wildfires, leaving the historic town of Lahaina, our own version of Pompeii, leveled to dust and ashes, the ground still so scorching that cadaver dogs work in short bursts to keep their paws from burning. The death toll stands at 96 and climbing. Over 1,300 people remain missing. Cell phones are ringing inside body bags. Burned-out cars line roadways, tires melted into asphalt. Recovered human remains are unidentifiable and falling apart. Yet President Joe Biden, whose so-called brand is empathy amid tragedy, just had to have his beach weekend in Delaware. No comment, he said when asked about Maui on Sunday. No comment? It was the same a few hours earlier, Biden dismissing reporters while bike riding near his beach home. We're looking at it, he said. What's to look at? Nothing, quite literally, is left. It's the summer of Oppenheimer, and comparisons have aptly been made to Hiroshima. This is a crisis that demands a primetime presidential address, the immediate deployment of Navy ships to provide shelter, food, and medical care, and a presidential visit to the disaster site. Instead, Biden's off to fancy Lake Tahoe on Friday, taking yet another vacation. What a disgrace. What a dereliction of duty. One could generously assume that Biden, age 80 and increasingly frail, is storing his energy for the 2024 campaign. If that's true, and argument enough for Biden to step aside, there's still an obvious solution here. Why not send Barack Obama, Hawaii's favorite and most famous son, whose own winter White House was based in Hawaii? Speaking of, where is Barack Obama? Why hasn't he made a visit? Obama, it seems, would rather not have his summer disrupted either. Instead, he's done the least he could do, releasing a video promoting a Red Cross telethon and tweeting thoughts and prayers from one of his multi-million-dollar homes on Martha's Vineyard or Chicago or D.C. or whatever superyacht he may be on, calling the images out of Hawaii tough to see. Talk about an understatement. Here's Obama in his 2020 presidential memoir, A Promised Land, on being a U.S. Senator during Hurricane Katrina in 2005. I stayed up half the night watching the news coverage, stunned. There were floating corpses, elderly patients trapped in hospitals, gunfire and looting, refugees huddled and losing hope. To see such suffering was bad enough. To see the slow government response, the vulnerability of so many poor and working-class people, made me ashamed. Guess what's happening in Maui now? Looting, gunpoint robberies and invasions of existing homes. Is Joe Biden ashamed? Where is the support? Local bar owner Matt Robb asked Insider. I don't think our government or our leaders, at this point, know how to handle it or what to do. Rest assured, Matt, they do, but it seems they don't care unless an election is involved. Recall Barack Obama, the one who was eyeing a presidential run in 2005, was on site in New Orleans within days, meeting with survivors and hearing their stories and taking note of what they needed immediately and in the future. I was reminded, he wrote, that no matter how my circumstances had changed, theirs had not. Forgotten people and forgotten voices remained everywhere, neglected by a government that often appeared blind or indifferent to their needs. To which a weary nation says, same as it ever was. How does Joe Biden appear now if not blind and indifferent? The mainstream media all but called then-President George W. Bush a racist for his delayed response to Katrina, and when Bush finally caved, he only flew over New Orleans rather than touch down. That decision, Bush wrote in his memoir, tarnished his legacy, rightly so. Huge mistake, he later admitted. The infamous photo of Bush looking down from Air Force One left the impression, he said, that he was detached and uncaring, no question about it. It was my fault. No such worries, it seems, for President Biden. Nor Hawaii's own Obama. One could argue that it's customary for former presidents to keep a low profile, to disengage from politics and policy, to leave D.C. once they leave office. But that's not Obama, who's maintained a residence in Washington, who has about 75% of his top 100 former staffers working for President Biden, who remains Biden's biggest campaign asset and has reportedly promised he will do everything he can to get Biden re-elected. So why hasn't it occurred to Biden, or any of the so-called top minds in his administration, you know, the ones who, we're constantly reassured, make it okay for this cognitively impaired mess to stay in office, to dispatch Barack Obama, and maybe Michelle, who's more popular than her husband? Probably because no one's calling them on it. The administration's current argument, swallowed whole by much of the media, is that neither the president nor Kamala Harris, herself another kind of natural disaster, want to be the distraction. Know who's a distraction? Oprah Winfrey, handing out pillows while grudgingly giving up the camera crew she brought to document what a humanitarian she is. Or Paris Hilton, whose fraud of a redemption tour has ended since posting happy family vacation photos just 30 miles from the devastation. Survivors want leadership. They want to see their president, or his named emissary, on the ground with them, viewing the wreckage, smelling the acridity, hearing what they need and how quickly they need it. They want assurances from those at the very top that the nation is with them, that they are top priority and no one will be left behind. Forgotten. You know, like the people of East Palestine, Ohio, who suffered a major toxic chemical spill after a train derailment last February. At least back then Biden acknowledged he should be there, saying he would visit at some point, which, of course, never happened. Nor did Kamala Harris show her face. Instead, the infuriatingly ineffectual Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, arrived 17 days later, sludging through the muck in fancy boots. At least he admitted that he should have been on site sooner. I could get technical readouts, information about the response, Buttigieg told CNN in March. But I think it was important to hear and see how the community was responding, what they were worried about, in just a different way that you can sense on paper. It just feels different. That said, when's the last time you heard Biden, Harris, or Buttigieg mention the people of East Palestine? Imagine that disaster, like Lahaina's, leveling New York or L.A. It would be all hands on deck at the White House. The people of Lahaina, like the people of East Palestine, are largely working class. They are people without resources or leverage, who can, as Obama wrote of Katrina's survivors, easily be overlooked. What will become of Lahaina? FEMA estimates it will take $6 billion to rebuild, even as it seeks $12 billion from Congress to avoid a shortfall. That seems a pressing question for the Biden administration, does it not? As do questions from longtime residents, barely holding on as wealthy visitors have snapped up vacation homes, sending real estate prices beyond their reach. I'm more concerned about big land developers coming in and seeing this charred land as an opportunity to rebuild, 25-year-old survivor Richie Palale told ABC News. The people of Lahaina, having lost everything, are facing yet another loss, future housing, Palale said, that we can't afford to live in, that's what we're afraid of. Their plight speaks to everything the Democratic Party is supposed to represent, protections for the poor and working class, compassion, and especially post-Trump, core competencies. Treating climate change, which contributed to this disaster, as the emergency it is. Addressing outdated communication systems and infrastructure to investigate human error, such as, why wasn't a single one of Maui's 80 Lahaina's warning sirens activated? Why didn't the U.S. learn from similar fires in Rhodes, Greece this past July, an emergency that saw up to 30,000 people evacuated in one day and suffered only one casualty, a firefighter? Biden's lack of urgency here, just as outlets like the New York Times have finally begun questioning his age and capabilities, is going to cost him. One would think Barack Obama, whose presidency gave us Donald Trump and whose legacy is still being written, might get himself to Maui post-haste, if for no other reason than to help Biden in 2024. Or at least out of self-interest. Barack Obama, lest we forget, is building his dream mansion in Oahu, having paid $8.7 million just for the land and exploiting at least 3 environmental loopholes to realize his vision. A little native Hawaiian goodwill, you'd think, would go a long way. And Joe Biden, who marinates in tragedy, needs to show, now more than ever, that he gets it.